All right, welcome back to the Let It Fly show. Michael Severe, Josh Jones out this week. We got a good show for you. We're going to talk some Nebraska basketball. We're taping this, of course, on Wednesday. Nebraska lost on Tuesday, their first loss of the year to go 20-1. We're going to talk to Andy Markowski about the team, the way the season's gone. Of course, long time. He broadcaster, was on the bench as a coach, was a player, of course, for Nebraska, was a captain for Nebraska. We'll talk to Andy about his thoughts about what happened against Michigan, but also, looking ahead and how this team's been built so far. Andy had a chance to watch him a lot in the summer as they were putting the team together, so we'll get into some of that as well. But I want to remind you, we're inside the Let It Fly Sports Bar, which is in beautiful downtown Omaha in the Capital District. We've got 3 locations. You have the one in the Capital District, right here at 11th and Capital. And then, of course, in La Vista at City Center, right along 84th Street, and then out west as well in the Elkhorn location of the Let It Fly Sports Bar. Reminder, every single day, you have 2 different choices, right? You can go 3 to 6 for happy hour. You can go from 10 to 1 a.m. for happy hour as well. Great happy hour specials, both drinks and food from 3 to 6, and then from 10 to 1 a.m. for the happy hour special as well. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Bud Light. Make it easy. Easy to drink, easy to enjoy no matter where you are, no matter what you're watching. If you're hitting here in the sports bar and you're watching everything, or you're at home, maybe you're in your man cave, wherever you are, making it easy to drink and easy to enjoy. Okay, I mentioned we're going to talk to Andy Markowski coming up. But first, let's do some headlines. A lot of things to talk about. Obviously, Nebraska, number 1 headline, dropping that game to Michigan. It was really the tale of 2 halves, right? As someone who looked at the over for this game, which was, I think, at 165 or something like that, the first half made you feel pretty good about it. 98 points scored in the first half by Nebraska and Michigan together, but then the second, a serious rock fight. And part of that was Michigan obviously realizing that they probably need to slow it down a little bit, but the referees kind of took over, let a lot of physical play happen. You had Michigan scoring the majority of their points from the free throw line. Their last 11 points scored. The last bucket they had in the game was at the 9:56 mark. Last bucket. The next 11 points, the last 11 points in there were scored from the free throw line for Michigan. And, of course, you had the block charge, no call with Sam Hoiberg, number 1 from Michigan, coming down the baseline. I could see where some people look and they say that Hoiberg was shuffling a little bit. The thing is, as long as you're not going forward, you can actually still have position and be moving laterally. And he did take a couple of little baby steps to the baseline, but he was still set and in position. And then I think the critical part of why it should have been a charge was, number 1 for Michigan, dropping his shoulder. He didn't go vertical up. He dropped his shoulder and went up. So I think that was initiating the contact on someone that had pretty good position. It probably should have been a charge, but they didn't call it. Overall, Big Blue shot 19 of 23 from the line. Nebraska, 3 of 4 from the line. And I know Nebraska doesn't shoot a ton of free throws, right? They don't. And I know Michigan shoots more, but that's a disparity you just don't see very often. Jamarcus Lawrence, great first half. Price Sanford, they both had 20 points. When you have Rink Mass out, and when, of course, you have Branden Frager still out, and you're only playing like 6 guys, maybe 7 guys, a lot of minutes, really 6 guys, you're going to wear down, and you could see that. Burke was exhausted. You could see the legs kind of going from Lawrence and Sanford a little bit. And because of that, that's how Michigan also got back in the game as well. But Nebraska's got another shot. They're sitting at number 5 in the country right now. They lost to number 3 team in the country. So you're thinking, well, they're going to drop. Well, if Sunday they beat the number 9 team in Illinois, and you see where Nebraska's net is, it actually went up a little bit with that loss to Michigan, a loss on the road to a team that good. Nebraska could still turn around, beat Illinois at home in a place that's going to be a raucous crowd, raucous environment. I know it's the second time playing Illinois after beating them back in December. But if Nebraska can somehow win that game, don't be surprised if they stay at 5. With the 1 loss, playing the 3 and 9 teams in the country, and you have the 1 loss, don't be surprised if they stay right where they are after playing Illinois if they can beat them. But number 2 headline, Creighton and Marquette. What can you say about Creighton? I mean, probably the worst first half they played since the Georgetown game they played in the Big East tournament a few years back. What have it been, like 4 or 5 years? That was a while ago. But, I mean, it was so bad. At halftime, it was 52-23. But at one point, it was 50 to 20-16. The Golden Eagles shot 68% in the first half. They shot 55% from three-point range. It just was, when you're not making shots and Marquette's that hot and you're on the road, that's going to happen. But Creighton played much better in the second half. Not good enough, obviously, to cover that kind of deficit, but ended up losing the game, a more respectable 86-62. However, that's now the 5th time this season that Creighton's lost a game by 15 or more points. I don't know how many times that's happened in the Greg McDermott era. I didn't have a chance to look that up, but 15 points or more, 5 games so far in the year. And they got some tough games. Matter of fact, they played number 2 UConn over at the Chi Center right around the corner from here. That's night game, 7 p.m. on Big Fox against number 2 Connecticut. And then some football news. You had the East-West Shrine game being played on Tuesday night, where everybody was watching Nebraska basketball or Creighton basketball. And then you have the Senior Bowl coming up next week. Sierra Wright for Nebraska had a great practice week, probably helped himself in terms of the draft, got himself, I'm sure, invited to the Combine at this point because how well he played during the practices at the Shrine Bowl. A couple of Iowa guys had a really good game. Markowski, their quarterback, was named the offensive MVP. I meant to see a couple of Big Ten guys had good days. Markowski from Iowa wins the MVP for the offense. And the defensive player of the game actually came from Wisconsin, Mason Rieger, who had 3 sacks. During the week, during practice, he was all over the place as a rush in and then had a great game as well. So he ended up getting those 3 sacks. The East team, West beat the East team 21-17. Deshaun Singleton will play in the Senior Bowl in Mobile that Saturday. Currently this week, you got practices going on. You can watch those on NFL Network or on ESPN. The Senior Bowl, of course, is in Mobile, Alabama. Deshaun Singleton is there. Former Omaha West Side quarterback and North Dakota State quarterback Cole Payton will also play in the Senior Bowl as well. We'll see if Cole is fully quarterback-wise or if this is something where he may be making a transition to, say, a tight end. I mean, he's 6'3", 233. So we know how athletic he is from when he played at Westside. Was a really good quarterback at NDSU, but at the same time, the next level, maybe it becomes, him playing a tight end position or something like that. But he also had 777 yards rushing last year, so we know how good of an athlete he is. So those 2 guys both playing in the Senior Bowl. All right, coming up next, we're going to chat some Nebraska basketball with former Nebraska basketball captain Andy Markowski joins us next here on Let It Fly Show. All right, welcome back to the Let It Fly Show. Of course, we're taping on the day after Nebraska lost their first game to Michigan, but we're going to chat with former Husker and former team captain of Nebraska basketball, Andy Markowski, joining us here. How you doing? I know you're a busy guy.
Yeah, doing well. Just it's right in the heart of basketball season, right?
Yeah.
Got high school going on and still following college a little bit, so great time of year.
So you're coaching your daughter Ava at Pius. And then, of course, you're going afterwards to your boys' game. What's that like as the parent, both sitting on the bench and then sitting in the stands?
No, it's great. So, Ava's a senior. I've been helping the girls at Pius since Alexis went through, right? So kind of in year 7 there, and being involved with her development career and having a chance to coach high school has been fun. And then Jake, I work with him more in the summer, but certainly as a high school side, become a spectator and a father. So it's been great trying to help him develop, and as a sophomore, he's making a lot of progress, and it's been fun to see that.
More pressure on Ava following Alexis or Jake following Andy?
They're all unique, right? It's just you want them to run their own race, and I think both my wife and I communicate that to them that they're all unique and they've all been very different players. I think Jake is probably the most similar to Alexis, more of a post, skeletally, kind of a big, strong inside player. So, there's probably more comparisons there, but Alexis set a pretty high standard. They're still chasing her, but siblings have all really supported each other and have shared in each other's successes and also build each other up when things don't go well. Yeah,
I was talking to some folks over actually out in Elkhorn, and one of the things you were talking about was parents having to make time when especially you have your kids staggered. What was that like coming up? Because you have another daughter too, right?
Yeah, Addison played, had a chance to had some Division II basketball offers and then decided just to go to UNL in school. And at the time I was like, well, I wish you could play, but I don't know how we would have balanced another college schedule with the other. So it was probably the best for for her. But yeah, certainly a challenge, and they
You got to
know
split duties. Wife taking care of one, you taking care of the other.
yeah, and they know when you're not there, you
Yeah.
know, and you try to rotate, you know, you don't want it to become where I'm always going to Jake's games, and obviously Ava, I have to
Sure.
be there. So, Jamie, my wife, has missed a lot of Jake's, which she hasn't enjoyed, but she keeps saying, well, then I'll coach Ava and Dad can go with you, and Ava doesn't want that too.
Right.
So yeah, it's
Right.
just, it's the balance of having, a large family, but I think they understand it, and we do our best to try to make sure we support all their activities.
Andy Markowski joining us on Let It Fly show. Well, let's talk about Nebraska. Obviously dropped their first game. I want to start off with one of the things you hear a lot about, and from national and local, is that it took a while for Coach Hoiberg to actually find the chemistry or the right construction of his team. When you look at starting in 23, what has he done? What's changed in your opinion about the way they've constructed the team now that fits better in what he wants to do?
Yeah, I have seen him change a lot. Being in Lincoln and following, obviously doing some TV and being involved. He came in and really thought he could out tempo the Big Ten, and knowing Doc Sadler, which at the time was there. Doc was trying to convince Fred that the Big Ten will slow you down to their pace. It just does that, and I think Fred fought that for a couple years. I think he overscheduled and just didn't have the roster to be successful against a really tough non-con schedule. But I think the biggest piece is bringing in Nate Linzer as a defensive coordinator. Nate, has kind of a unique defensive style, and I think it's really allowed them to maybe not be as athletic or as big and really fit what Fred is looking for offensively, and then find a system that allows them to be successful on the defensive end. So I think that addition allowed them to creep up in the top defensive statistical categories to win some close games in the Big Ten. And then, I just think the players have developed. I mean, I think you look at, look at his son, Sam, and look at Cal Jacobson, and you look at Rick Mass' development, and, players have just gotten better in his system. So, a lot of these kids have been in there 2, 3, 4 years, even Jamarcus Lawrence leaving, but, this is his third or fourth year with Fred. So the combination of becoming better defensively, recruiting guys that are really skilled offensively that fits what he wants to do, and then just their overall skill development in the program, I think have been the catalyst of why they've, certainly didn't expect them to be 20-1, but watching them this summer, they, you liked a lot of the guys they had in the gym.
There's a lot of downsides to the transfer portal and all of that. But once you establish a system, it does almost make it easier to pick the guy. Like Price Sanford fits perfectly in what he wanted, right? It almost makes it a little bit easier.
No, it does.
Wise?
So Fred's a big analytics guy, right? He's from layups to threes, but they're also very analytical in how you fit. And you're watching a 15-year-old or 16-year-old, projecting them at 21 or 22, how they fit and grow and develop and work, which ones want to continually to get better. I think recruiting has been a hard science. But now that you have the portal, you have 1, 2, 3 years of college data, where you're playing against your peers equal size, you're playing against systems that are demanding you to do X, Y, and Z, either offensively or defensively, schematically. So I do think they've, tried to match with a limited, collective payroll. Like, they're in the bottom, third of the league in terms of what they can compete with for salaries for these players. So I do think they've hit on a few. Sanford certainly was a huge addition, but they had a prior relationship with him in high school from recruiting him, et cetera. I think all that is important for, I think Creighton's filling that a little bit with maybe not finding a couple good fits, right? Where I think Coach Hoiberg, they hit on this group a little bit, which fit well with the pieces they had. So I do think the predictive analysis of who they're going after in the portal, they're not coming with the highest amount of contract money, but they do fit what he's looking for. And culturally, I learned a lot from the Crown last year. Gary and Bryce Williams did not need to play in the Crown. I mean, it was a new tournament. You didn't know what it was. Most teams had lost, a lot of kids to the portal or kids that were going to go play professionally. They just wanted to get a kickstart on that. But the fact that whole core stayed together and played, I think speaks to that they like basketball, they like being around each other. They trust the coaching staff. So that told me the culture is probably really good, and then you add the Samford piece to this year, and looking back, it probably doesn't surprise you that they are pretty good.
Yeah, you may not even know what you have in Cale Jacobson without the crown, right? I mean, you have the injuries. He's all of a sudden playing, and you're like, oh, look what we have.
Yep. And they probably saw that in practice.
Sure.
But as a coach, you don't know if you trust it, in terms of putting him or giving him 15, 18,
Right.
20 minutes for maybe that productivity to happen, over a 4-game stretch. And, I think Sam Hoiberg scored more in those 4 games than he did leading up to that. So I think it increased his confidence that maybe he could take and make big shots. So, yeah, it's certainly you always hear, hey, you played in the NIT, you won the NIT, you roll that, energy and experience into the following year.
Yeah.
But it truly did happen in the Crown. I think there was a lot of carryover on a lot of different levels that they were allowed to build on that momentum.
Andy Markowski joining us here on the Let It Fly show. Can you think of a guy Sam's size that rebounds like he does?
Yeah, Teron Lue. I mean, for one. Just in my time, Teron, was immensely talented and athletic at 5'10" or 6 foot. But no, I mean, Sam's done a great job. I
basically leading the team in rebounding.
Yeah, on defensive rebounding,
Yeah.
And I think, I think offensively, Sam's had a better year because of the spacing that this team has created.
Sure.
Last year, you just didn't shoot it very well, which, they went out and signed some shooters. So there wasn't a lot of areas for Sam to really drive and expand his ability to get assists and create shots for teammates. And then he's finding himself open a lot just because, if you're going to take a player away, I mean, you're taking Mast away and you're taking Samford away. He's down that list a little bit.
Yeah, even Lawrence.
Speaks to how talented they are. But last year, going back to Sam Hoiberg, I thought there's games where you'd play 22, 24, 26 minutes. He'd get 2 points, 4 points. And in the Big Ten, the 2-guard is a pro position.
Sure.
Like you have to be productive in those minutes. And I thought he wasn't as productive as he needed to be offensively. Now, was he doing the little things and defending and he's always done all that. But the growth from last year to this year in terms of his confidence and his offensive ability to, he's been in double figures, I think, 10 or 11 times and hit some big shots and has led them in scoring a couple games. You can just go through the list on the improvement that the roster has made over last year. And he's, probably has grown the most and will be, considered for some postseason awards, especially on the defensive end.
Definitely. So rank out for the game against Michigan. Obviously, Branden Frager was out because of the ankle. When you look at the way they played without 2 of their best players, does it give you more confidence going forward the rest of the season?
Yeah, you just don't know how. Maybe they're just really good. Right?
Yeah, definitely.
You just keep thinking that they're going to lose a few games, and you don't get through the Big Ten without 15-5, 16-4.
Sure.
You look at the last 3 or 4 or 5 years of winning the league. 3 losses, I think, is pretty normal.
Sure.
So they're going to find losses, but not having those 2 pieces last night, and then really had some bad breaks late to almost upsetting Michigan. So I think they're talented. They're unique. I think they're hard to guard. I think the complexity it reminds me a little bit of what. Not to have 2 Creighton references, as I'm a Nebraska guy, but you look at the creativity McDermott had, maybe a year ago with Kalkbrenner and a 6-year point guard. He's able to do a lot of really, really creative, hard things to guard because he's got experienced guys that, if you want to switch, they'll adjust. If you want to, tag, if you want to drop coverage, I mean, they have counters to counters to counters. And I think they're going to stay ahead of the league because they are so mature and old and Fred does have just a wealth of experience running good offense. So, I think they're going to be a hard out. But last night, I think proves to everybody Mast is really good and Frager's really good. But the guys they had playing last night might be better than what people think too.
I obviously you've seen this sitting on the bench as a player and as a coach. But Michigan's last 11 points came from the free throw line. Nebraska wasn't getting a lot of calls. You had the block charge call that they didn't call. What's that feeling like? The frustration of knowing that you're undefeated stop because of things that maybe you weren't necessarily in control of points.
Yeah, again, there's some games that you're going to feel like you get a bad whistle, and I certainly think the charge, the referee swallowed the whistle when if there's a foul late, you need to,
right.
But I don't buy that. I mean, if there's a foul, it's a foul.
Sure.
If it's a foul in the first minute of the game, it should be a foul in the last minute of the game. Certainly a half-court shot or something to tie, you might have some discretion there. But that was a big no call that went against Nebraska. But, Again, you've got Illinois and then, at Rutgers, which, played Michigan State in overtime, and then Purdue. So they can't let that game lose two for them. They've got to move on. And, obviously they'll get Mass back. And then, I think Frager's close to being back in the rotation. So, again, I don't think anybody anticipated them being undefeated through the Big Ten schedule. You really have the league title kind of at your fingertips. I mean, you beat Illinois and Purdue. You got head-to-head against Michigan State, and certainly Michigan is showing signs that maybe they are not as dominant as what they were in the non-con. I mean, they've played a lot of close games here over the last 2 or 3 weeks, so I think they probably have a few more losses on their schedule as well.
You were talking about the unique things that Nebraska did, especially defensively. Now they're going to play Illinois on Sunday, a team they've already played. Do you make adjustments on that? You just keep doing what you do, knowing that Illinois kind of has that real-life scout of seeing you do it already?
Yeah, they don't change. It's kind of a unique style where – some teams might face guard a best player. I mean, they guard the ball screen a little different, but they're going to double the post. They're going to switch everything on the backside. They're in recovery a lot. I think it's up to Illinois to change. Are they going to guard Samford any different? Now they're obviously their best defender is out, which changes maybe what they can do, but. Defensively, Nebraska does what they do. I mean, they're going to double the post. They're going to take your best post scoring away from you. You're going to be forced to play on the backside and make a bunch of 3-pointers. And if you do that, you're going to beat them. But they're just not going to give up twos. They're not going to foul. And for the most part, they're going to have 5 in the lane helping them rebound as they are undersized. I mean, Hoiberg's not. Lawrence is not positionally long for point guard.
Right.
Hoiberg's not positionally long. Certainly, Kel Jacobson is not. And Rink, even at 6'9", Barricades the only one to me that has positional size. He's 6'11" as a 4. The rest of them are undersized, so they do have to rebound as a committee. And I think Nate Lintzer's defensive style of how much they help in the lane allows them to rebound as 5 versus having one post that has to go get every rebound on the court. So again, Illinois is a good team and they'll come in here hungry to knock us off, but we had them down 12-14 most of that game, and we really controlled the game on the road.
Yeah, well, Michigan game, they're up 36 minutes. Nebraska had the lead in that game. What about Curtis, who got a chance to play a little bit last night, came in. First touch, he got a bucket. What do you think about how he played?
Yeah, Leo was great. Just even watching him this summer and his skill and length. I mean, he's a true 7-footer. I mean, he's big and he moves well. And I think that was a good game for him because we just weren't big enough against their front line. Obviously, having a 7-footer themselves. So I think he'd be playing a lot this year.
Yeah,
and they're really. What he gives them on the defensive end, he's not able to do what Barricade and Rink does on offense, and even Garcia a little bit. Just the complexity in the counters and things they're running. Leo's a little behind Rink and Bearkin. I think that's why he probably gets shorter minutes, as Fred isn't more of an offensive guy. But I think in time, if they can keep him in the program, I mean, again, he's a freshman that's not playing a lot. So you just hope you have a culture where you can show them that you can develop and grow. And then by the end of your career, you're going to be really good. So hopefully Leo has patience, because I do think he's a player that can have a great career in the Big Ten. Because
Rink was out and obviously Frager was out, they played the smaller lineup to start the game, and I thought it really kind of mixed up what Michigan wanted to do. What do you think about that little bit smaller lineup in there with those guys out?
Again, I think playing small with how we defend is something you can do, because we are going to double the post and rebound as 5. So Fred has a lot of versatility and creativity to they can play big or they can play small, and as you get into the NCAA tournament, being able to do that is huge. I mean, because you in the middle of a game you can adjust or play a different style, or even from game 1 to the next round, if we ever win that first game, that's a hard prep too, because you don't know if we're going to play big or small, so that makes that prep that much harder. So teams that can, I think, play versatile offensively, and Jacobson gives them that ability. I mean, he can play point to the 5, which is really a strange. Normally 2 or 3 positions would be a lot for a player. So ability to bring up the point and then go guard a 5 and run the 5 in Fred's system speaks to the intelligence that Kel has, and the willingness to just learn and do whatever the team needs him to do. I mean, there's not a lot of, in this day and age, the Hoibergs and the even Berke, is frustrating. He is at times, he still fits the role that they need. All of them are willing to do what the team needs them to do to win. And as long as that stays at the forefront, I think this team's going to be right there in the end.
You're right there in Lincoln, watching the basketball scene. Did you see this in Branden Frager?
Well, I did this summer, so I was not skeptical, but I'd watched Branden in high school,
Yeah.
and obviously had a couple good summers of AAU, and had the Creightons and Iowa States, and then leaving school early, you're always like like what just stay and enjoy high school. So
Right.
all that made you like, oh, he's probably running the race too fast. And I watched him. Well, kept hearing last year that he was having a really good redshirt year, so had a chance to see him in the spring. And then watched the summer scrimmage. So the last Tuesday of the summer, rink was back. So they had a full refs, and they just pretty much did a scrimmage. And Branden was the best player on the floor. And it had like 26 points in the scrimmage. And I was like, okay, like, can he do it in a game? And I think it took him 2 games in to score 25 or 26. And it's like, okay, like what you're seeing is now transferable in a game. So did I predict that out of high school? No. Were there signs for his redshirt year and this summer that he was pretty good and could help them? Yes. But again, the consistency and the big shots and the big games, it's hard. I mean, you're an 18-year-old playing against 22, 23, 24. You just don't see the freshmen having, and now the DeBonces and the Pete's at Arizona, those guys. But the not very recruited kid that redshirts going in and playing as freshmen, that's getting to be a rarity just because the portal has taken over what colleges want on their roster.
Kind of a bad thing though, right? I mean, because I know so many guys that weren't ready to play, set out that year, and all of a sudden the next year, even good players, it's sometimes you miss out on that development. Hey, just getting used to college and going to class and learning and doing all that stuff.
All the above, and I think that Braden's put the work in offensively to become the player he is, but I think the veteranness of this team.
Yeah, that's true.
He's an emotional guy. He's had his incidents, but I think they reel him back in and balance that a little bit. Whereas if you didn't have 23 and 24-year-olds and maybe they were younger and more inexperienced, I don't know if Branden would be as far along. I think that balance has really helped his maturity and poise, and they've probably empowered him to be confident and be himself. But yet I think, locker room talks and hanging out, it's like, listen, you have to control your emotions. So I think the veteranness of the team has probably really accelerated his growth and development because, there's times that, that emotion can get you into trouble or bad shot selection and things that they can just say, hey, just, calm down. That's not a good shot. And I think, they have the trust in him that message is heard.
We had Branden come in here. This is during his redshirt year. And when it was done, I said to Josh, my coach, I was like, that kid is so confident. Yeah. He reminded me a lot, I said this of Will Compton when he got to Nebraska. Like I'm going to do this. I know what I can do. And I don't know if he could be as good. Like, you got to hold him back, yes. But at the same time, you got to let his confidence flow.
Yep. And I'll give the coaching staff credit. I mean, you have, Kendall Blue that was, player that came in that, obviously had expectations and money attached to that. And they kind of let it play out. And, Branden had separated himself, which they needed. They needed somebody to separate and give them another, score that's a little different than what they had in Essien and Sanford. I thought Branden was different than both of them, which, obviously Essie's now hurt. But he gave them an element of conversion finishing and putting the ball on the floor and finishing around the rim they didn't have. And I think they missed that last night. You saw Michigan really spread and run us off the three-point line. I think with Frager last night, you win that game even without Mast. I think one of those two would have helped you get that victory.
Well, Michigan was helping. I mean, they were throwing the ball away. Part of it's Nebraska's defense, but when you watch a team like Michigan that's so young, you see that immaturity, right? Bad shots being taken, making bad passes. It's kind of the advantage that Nebraska has against those teams.
And last year, Michigan really struggled. I mean, it was 49. We struggled scoring against them, but they really struggled against how we doubled. And it does take a unique style. There's some systems that fit right into how you play against us. They're going to spread you. They're going to shoot it from 5 spots. They're going to put you in rotation and shoot a bunch of threes. Michigan wasn't that team. They're used to throwing it on the block and then playing out there. We're so naturally a good double team. So I'm not sure Coach May has a great feeling of how to play against our defense yet. This is only his second game against us. Some coaches just don't do well or don't have a good strategy because they don't play the way that you need to play against Nebraska's defense, if that makes sense. So I don't think Michigan would be a bad match for us down the road either, because they didn't seem to have a great a great feel. If Stanford hits 5 or 6 or half of his open threes he got in the second half too, that game could have played out differently.
And those guys were worn down.
They were tired.
Short
They gave
bench.
everything they had. I mean, you have to be extremely proud of that effort, because I think most of us, once you heard both weren't playing, thought it was potentially going to get away from them. So, but yeah, again, they've it doesn't get any easier. It's a tough league. And it's a deep league, and even the bottom 3 or 4 teams in the league can beat you if you don't play well.
Sure. Last couple things. Is there a preference you have for regional location? Oklahoma City's close. Obviously, St. Louis 7 hours away. Greenville, South Carolina. I've seen some rumors about that. Is there a place you want to see Nebraska play?
Well, I've booked rooms for Okie in St. Louis. Okay. So if I couldn't get that win as a player, I certainly want to be there if I happen to do it. But my son and I have kind of committed that. We want to travel wherever that is, but certainly from a feasibility and financial standpoint, it'd be easy to have a drivable site. But again, I think they'll play themselves into that 2 and 3 line. I think they would have to have things really fall apart to drop below that, which gives them a great chance to, certainly advance past round 1, but maybe even get into the second weekend, which would be. I think a lot of people in the state would be having a little fun with Nebraska being a Sweet 16.
Do you let yourself think about that?
Yeah, I want the program to have. We've had some really good teams.
Oh yeah.
And to sit there and be the only team to not win a game it's really unbelievable. Because in the '90s, we had 6 chances at it and had some good seeds. And
even 2 years ago, they beat everybody else on that line except for A&M.
Yeah, correct. So there's been some things that have worked against them, but I just want to kind of get that off. You just get tired of having people throw that back at you. I mean, we've had some really good teams that probably have deserved an opportunity. Probably the most talented team we had is the one that won the NIT in '96, and we had 4 NBA guys. We just couldn't get out of our own way and get it figured out on the court. But again, I do think about that just because I just kind of want that removed. And I've gotten to know this staff really well. I mean, Ernie Ziegler and I were at Bowling Green together, so it's just you want to see that success. But they've done it the right way. They've built it. It'd be, just be great for them to win one, but get to the Sweet 16. Then you multiply that into maybe a better recruit or a better transfer, and then you hopefully just keep building from the spot you're at to maybe that's in the rearview mirror, and you're now a top half program in the Big Ten, which gets in the tournament every year. I mean, that would be the goal.
Still, the chances you mentioned to win the Big Ten too. I mean, have that banner hanging there in the vault would be awesome
would be great. I mean, it's been it's the program has struggled certainly. The last 20 years has struggled, but give Fred credit. They've been persistent, and this is it's a good group of kids too. They do it the right way, and they represent the state and the school. And Alexis knows a lot of them from her time there. So you root for them. And as a former player, I'd love to see them get that first win.
Be awesome, Andy. We appreciate it. Thanks for taking the time.
Thanks, Michael.
All right, special thanks to Andy Markowski for coming on and chatting with us. His Alexis, his daughter, people might be wondering, had that really bad injury her junior and senior year with the hamstring. And I actually talked to Alexis a couple of months ago. She was doing an event that I was at, and she's not playing anymore. She went into the business world, very happy doing that. Thought about maybe going over to Europe or trying to continue to play, but that injury never really got better. And so decided, she had a great career at Nebraska, and decided to not play anymore. So she is just retired at a very young age from the sport of basketball. But thanks to her dad, Andy, and of course his son, Jake, is just a sophomore at Pius, and his daughter, Anna, she is a senior this year over at Pius. I had a chance to watch them play against Central about a week and a half ago. So thanks to him for coming in. Also, thanks to Caleb, our producer, for being here as well. Mike Allen, general manager, and our executive producer of the show, and the video team at Stable Gray for putting this whole thing together. Also, thank you to our presenting sponsor, Bud Light, making it easy to drink and easy to enjoy no matter what you're doing, no matter what sport you're watching. Lots of sports to watch right now, obviously, with the Super Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks, all the college basketball and NBA basketball as well. Wherever you're watching, whatever you're doing, Bud Light, making it easy to drink and easy to enjoy. And also want to remind you, if you're watching this on YouTube, like and subscribe to our channel. That way you get the podcast right away when they drop. Also, if you're listening on Spotify or Apple Music, either one, like and subscribe on there as well so you get the podcast right when they drop. Again, thanks to Caleb for being here and helping me put this together. And have a great week. It's Let It Fly Show.